Loosey-goosey, baby. Welcome to Suitcase Coder, the podcast. My name is Laura, and I'm the host of this podcast where I track my journey from joining a coding bootcamp to becoming a freelance web developer. My ultimate goal in life is to travel the world and see as many countries as I possibly can as a freelance remote developer. That is, to become a digital nomad. With this podcast, I hope to help and inspire future techies, freelancers, and digital nomads as I share what I've learned along the way. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get started. One of the many reasons why I wanted to start a podcast goes back to when I was learning to code and I would face these problems and spend hours on hours on hours trying to figure something out, only to find out that it was actually something so incredibly simple. But sometimes so simple that you'll never see it in a tutorial because once you learn it, you completely forget about it because of how simple it was. Think of this. You lose your sunglasses, you turn your house absolutely upside down looking for it, you search your car, you blame all of your friends for stealing your sunglasses, only to find out that your sunglasses had been on your head the entire time. That's the exact kind of frustration that one feels when you're learning to code, when you spend so many hours on a problem or you're stuck on something or you don't understand a concept of learning to code. And then you find the answer and it's like, oh, such a big relief, but also a little bit frustrating that you spent so much of your day trying to figure it out. So with this podcast, I want to help better formulate questions, even if you're completely lost when you're learning to code, to get better answers quicker. And I'm going to break it down into 3 different parts. 1 is know the scenario of your question. Give your question some context. 2, learn some vocabulary. And 3, what to do once you do receive some answers. Let's get started. The first thing, back to our sunglass scenario where you lose your sunglasses and you're asking for friends, hey, have you seen that thing on the thing? I think I left it next to that other thing on the kitchen. That gives absolutely no concept or no context of what you're looking for, where it could possibly be, and your friends are just going to look at you like, huh? So the same applies to when you're learning to code. If you go to Google or a mentor or a friend and you say, hey, I'm trying to figure this thing out and I can't get it to do the thing that I want it to do and I need some help and I'm really frustrated, can you help me? They're going to be just as lost as you are. So you want to give whoever's helping you out, whether that's a machine or a real person, some context regarding your problem. So one tip or one thing that you could do is take a step back and look at the big picture. What are you trying to accomplish? What's the end goal? Big term. Is it an app that you're trying to create from beginning to end? Or is it a certain part of a project? Whatever it is, look at the big picture and that kind of gives you a little bit of guidance as to what you're trying to accomplish. And then from there, break it down as much as you can into the actual problem that you're currently facing. Let's say you're working on an app, but you're stuck on an if statement. How does this if statement, how does your problem relate to the rest of the entire app? So now you have a bit more context as to where you're getting stuck and what you're trying to accomplish. And that alone may actually just give you the answer that you were looking for. Sometimes we get so bogged down in the details and so frustrated on trying to figure out this one thing, when in reality we're getting sidetracked and our problem wasn't even actually a problem to begin with. We just got lost in the details. So that may actually already have helped you out. But if not, here comes the second part. Knowing the vocabulary and the syntax surrounding your question and where you're getting stuck. Google could potentially have all the answers in the world, but if you don't know how to ask the right question, you're not going to get it. And one way to help is knowing the syntax around your question. And that's confusing because sometimes that is your question, is trying to figure out the name of the thing that you don't know what it is. But if you know the context of your question and you know the scenario where you're getting stuck, then you can at least give it some surrounding syntax, some surrounding vocabulary. And this, by the way, can be extremely helpful when you're learning new tools. So if you're wanting to get into coding, or if you're just now getting into coding, it would be helpful to go back and study up some of the scenarios, some of the context syntax that you might be coming across when you're learning to code. Because if you familiarize yourself with these vocabulary words that you're going to be coming across, then you won't have to double learn. That is, learn what that vocabulary word means, as well as learn what it does and where it applies to. Like I said, now that you have the context, learn some vocabulary, and then from there, really all it is just plugging in the vocabulary and the things that you're learning together to build code. So let's say you're like, I really need this number here, where instead you could say, hey, I'm trying to make an if statement and I'm trying to pass the parameter down to the if statement, but it's not working. That already shows so much more detail and structure to your question, and it will only result in better answers, I think. Not only that, so I attended a boot camp in which we had one-on-one mentorship along with Q&A sessions every once in a while. And something that was really helpful, I think, to the mentors was knowing that you had spent some time on your own trying to figure out your own problems, because at the end of the day, that is what coding is. And when you go to real life job, you're going to have to figure out, you're going to get stuck. It's part of the game. And so you have to know how to ask these questions properly and how to do research on times when you do get stuck by yourself. So with knowing the scenario of your question and using the right vocabulary, you can formulate great questions to ask Google or your mentor, and it's going to show that you took some time to try to get unstuck yourself, as well as providing detailed information that can help get your answers quicker. With that comes actually getting the answers. And there's 3 different things that could happen when you get the answers. So on the first try, you could miraculously get the right answer and you get unstuck, which would be amazing. And then you get to move on until you get stuck again, which, like I said, happens a lot when you're learning to code. And that's okay. The second possibility is that you get your answer back and you end up being more confused than you were when you first started. And that's a possibility, but don't take it as a sign that you're not good enough to become a developer, or don't take it as a sign that the person is trying to be rude and not listening to you. Because like I said, you know the scenario, you know what you're trying to figure out, you know where you've gotten stuck way more than the next person. And also on top of that, you know your learning style best. So maybe they're trying to help you out, but it's just not the way that you best perceive it. And maybe it's just a reminder to take a step back completely, close your computer, take a nap, go for a run, do something totally different, get your mind completely off of coding, and then come back to it after you've taken a break. So don't forget to take your breaks. Those are important as well. So the third answer that you could possibly get could still be the wrong answer, but it might help you eliminate the questions that you're not trying to ask and the answers that aren't going to work for your code. So maybe you get an answer and you're like, oh yeah, this is it. You plug it in, you run it, and it's still broken, or it comes up with another error. At least you know that that's not the right answer, and you can eliminate that from possible answers. So that's one thing. Another thing is it might provide a little bit more syntax as to what you're trying to figure out. So maybe you ask a question and within the answer, they use certain vocabulary that's brand new to you, but it applies exactly to what you're trying to figure out. So that would be great, because then you're getting more syntax and you can use that to re-ask the question the right vocabulary. So if this is the case, at least you're eliminating things out and you're getting closer to being unstuck on your problem, which is, of course, the reason for asking questions in the first place. So that concludes my 3 points as to how to better ask questions when you're stuck on a problem or you're misunderstanding a concept when you are learning to code. Action item for this week requires you to get stuck. If you never get stuck, I know you're lying. So whenever you do get stuck next and you're trying to ask a question, see if these tips help you out and see what kind of answers you're receiving back. Is it helpful? Is it less time consuming? And is it making your day a little bit less stressful? Because that's the goal of this podcast. I really do want to help you out. For this week's coding challenge, I want you to find the sum of a string of numbers. So let's say I have a function, I provide it a string as long as 10 digits long in string form. And I want this function to return the sum of the numbers of that string. Obviously, don't include letters in the string, otherwise you're not going to get a number. And remember to check back to my YouTube channel for the answers to those weekly challenges. If you have not seen them yet, they will be up pretty soon. That's it for this week's podcast episode. If you have liked it, please don't forget to subscribe and rate us on Apple Podcasts. You can also catch it on Spotify, Google, Anchor, or whatever your preferred streaming service may be. And if you would like to watch the recorded episode, please head over to my YouTube channel at Suitcase Coder, where I provide more than just weekly recordings, as well as tutorials and other tips and experiences from my personal coding bootcamp experience. Thanks for listening, and until next week. Ciao!